Welcome back to another World Ablaze, recorded this day, the 4th of May, 2026. Or as they say, may the 4th be with you. Been gone a while. I apologize for that. So that I know this is a bit of a late release, but I have actually been on a bit of a podcasting tour. I myself have been a guest on many other podcasts. Some are bigger than others. That doesn't really matter. The fact that they're giving me an opportunity to speak on their shows is great. And honestly, when those are made available, I'm going to share those with you. And where I can, I'll even include those as a bonus episode on my own feed, just so that you have access to the conversation. But again, trying to stay on this. Apologize for the bit of a break here. But even though I have been a guest on other shows, I am lining up great guests for you as well. So there's going to be still a mixture, a smattering of both solo episodes with me as well as guests. But look for those guest episodes soon as they are released. I actually am recording with a few this week. So again, just be on the lookout. Some of these people are pretty much very, very prominent social media figures. Like they have very large followings, very large voices. I have an Intel expert, another Intel expert. You know, I love my Intel experts, right? I love the intelligence people. But another person has agreed to come on the show. We're still working out dates right now. The man is very busy, given everything he does. I'm not surprised. But that person, who cannot be named right now, I wish I could, will be on the show. But I have another Intel expert coming on. So basically, that's what you need to know. It's going to be a great episode. That being said, let's also talk about the increase in listenership. Primarily, what I've seen is a spike in some new areas. Now, I do want to give a shout out to Iceland again. It seems like we're growing there. They've shown up on the radar again, as I've said a few episodes back. But it seems like it's getting more consistent, and the amount of listeners, the amount of downloads coming from Iceland. Thank you very much, everybody over there. Appreciate it. Vietnam is staying strong. They were a newcomer, and they seem to be consistent as well. And here's a new one for me. This has never been consistent for me, by the way. But Japan came out of nowhere. Very significant downloads out of Japan. Thank you so much. Not sure what sparked that, but I will take your listenership. I will take your support. And I hope that I continue to deliver on whatever it is that attracted you to the show in the first place. But thank you very much. So there is a nod to Japan as well. And outside of that, listen, everybody, thanks for supporting the show. I want to remind everybody, I'm trying to grow my Substack. So if you have a Substack account, if you're on Substack, remember to follow me. My handle is @FontsAblaze. Pretty much the same thing as says down here, on the ticker. Right down there, pretty much everything's @FontsAblaze. So if you follow me on Substack, I will appreciate it. I am contributing more articles, more written articles. Some of them are assessments or basically like a look back on an episode I recorded with a guest. And it's my reflection on that particular episode. So I'm trying to do more of those. I've already started. So be on the lookout for more articles, more assessments in written form on my Substack. If you're not following me on X, I don't know why. It makes no sense because, hey, if you're into politics, I'm sure you're on X. Again, handle is @FontsAblaze. I am on Instagram. And a new one for me, I'm not very big on this whatsoever, but I have been contributing shorts and whatnot to TikTok. So if you're on TikTok, again, same thing, @FontsAblaze. So my handle is pretty much the same on all the social medias, @FontsAblaze. And and before I get going, I'm gonna see this cup here. It's filled with something good. It's of course it's coffee. That's what I drink. Come on, you silly. This is Kalakam Craft coffee though. So the owners, Bill and Dana, were very kind, and we've been talking back and forth. And they wanted to send me a sample. Say, hey, let me know if you like the coffee, because I'll just say this, they pride themselves on the quality of their coffee. They pride themselves on integrity. And they're not looking for a handout in terms of relationship with anybody, especially me. They're like, look, if we're going to do anything together, and by the way, it still isn't finalized, so I'm not saying that we're in some kind of sponsorship agreement. This is just me giving a big shout out and a thank you. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. But the conversation I had was basically, look, before we do anything here, I want you to taste our coffee. You have to actually like it before we can come to any agreement, because the reality is, I get it. Like, why would you want someone to endorse your product if they truly haven't used it, or in this case, drank it, sipped it, made a pot or two, right? But I'm going to tell you this. Colloquium Craft Coffee, they're out of Washington, Washington. And I'm just going to say this. It literally is some of the best coffee I've ever had. This is not a lie. And the package that Bill and Dana sent me was ridiculous. I thought it was like a sample, like little sample bags. I think they sent me like a half pound or whatever of every dang blend that they make, or every roast. And damn, I did not expect that, but I appreciate it, guys. And I'm going to tell you what, I've tried every single blend, and so far I can say the consistency is crazy. The quality is great. And it's really like some of the lowest acidic coffee I've had, regardless of bean, whether it's Guatemalan, Peruvian, Brazilian, Ethiopian, it doesn't matter. Whatever process they're using there, or wherever they're getting the beans, whatever the case is, the quality control that they have and what they deliver has been consistent. Every single roast is great in flavor profile. And again, the acidity is extremely low, which I was very surprised at. So anyway, hats off to you, Bill and Dana at Colloquium Craft Coffee. And look, this is just me saying, everybody, if you like coffee, I do. I drink it on my show just about every time I have an episode. I'm going to leave the link in the show notes. If you're watching the video portion of this, obviously you're going to see up on the screen their website, etc. But support Colloquium Craft. Do yourself a favor. Buy some damn good beans. These things are small batch produced. They're high quality, and they do a very, very good job. So you're not going to be disappointed. If you're a coffee lover, you're going to love Colloquium Craft Coffee. And again, this is me just saying, hey, thank you, Bill and Dana. Appreciate the coffee. I really am a fan. The stuff's great. So there you go, everybody. So support Bill and Dana at Colloquium Craft Coffee. All right. So as far as the show goes, let's go ahead and move on with the show here. I'm going to do something, I'm going to be honest, I'm tired of talking about, is Iran. We got to talk about Iran. It's not going away, right? I have given so many assessments based on much detail, lots of detail. I'm doing deep dives in this thing, giving you lots of facts and data. And, whether you like it or not, doesn't matter. I mean, facts are facts, right? I've always said facts don't care about your feelings. I wish the people commenting on social media about my posts or short videos would understand that, because regardless of how mad you are at me for presenting the facts, it just doesn't change the situation. So there's that. But we're going to touch on that. Why? There's a few things I need to do. First, I need to push back a little bit on a few prominent figures. Dave Smith and Tim Dillon. Yeah. So Dave Smith is constantly wrong in his assessments. Let's just say he's half right. And Tim Dillon is, his assessments and whatnot are always based on his feelings. So I'm going to address them separately in my presentations of what's happening in Iran. So this is what we're going to discuss with Iran. We're going to talk about the current state of Iran right now, given the last nearly 2 months of conflict or war, however you want to coin it, with the U.S. And outside of the current state of Iran, we're obviously going to talk about Project Freedom a little bit. And I'm going to touch on something else that nobody that I know of anyway, I haven't heard, has discussed when it came to the control that Iran allegedly, supposedly, maybe legally, but not really has, over controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Because, truth be told, it's supposed to be a joint custodial relationship between Iran and Oman. Because a lot of people don't even realize that the major shipping lanes primarily actually travel through Oman's territorial waters. So basically, does Iran have a right to control the strait? Are they literally, have they been all these years the aggressor? Do they have any real claim, or do they have any real legal claim to the control of the strait? Interesting questions, right? We're going to get to that and do the best I can anyway. So that's something we're going to discuss, which nobody has brought up, at least to my knowledge, they haven't. And then we're going to get away from the Iranian war. Hey, yeah, a little something different. So there's been a few things I haven't touched on. It's probably old news for you guys, right? But Southern Poverty Law Center, I have not discussed that, haven't touched on it. So I'm going to discuss that for a little bit, and then we got two things that are interesting here. We're going to talk, and this has been on my desk for a while. I just haven't been able to discuss it. Well, that's not true. First off, let me just get to what it is. So it's about the vehicles that are going to be sold in the United States starting 2027. So any new model is going to have systems in place which basically read your biometric data. We're talking about infrared cameras, scanners, voice recognition software, lip reading software. They're going to be able to determine whether or not you're fit to drive. There is the controversial claim of a kill switch that is basically going to be embedded into the vehicle. It's going to be able to tell if you have alcohol in your breath, for example. It will judge whether or not you're overly excited, whether you're too emotional to drive, etc. I know it's a lot of crazy things, but this is law now. It's been mandated, and we didn't get the choice. We didn't vote on this, not that I know of. I never saw it, never had the opportunity, but here you go. The government's looking out for you because they know what's best. So there's that. Kind of scary, right? Here we are in the age of governmental control. And here's another crazy thing. So there's patents. This is another subject here. There's patents by Google, I believe. And I think Wells Fargo, I'm not quite sure the tie-in, but Wells Fargo has something to do with the patent portfolios. But there is a biometric aerosol spray. That's right. A spray which has like nanoparticles or nanometals that will be able to penetrate your skin, which will be able to read your face, your heart rate, etc. Something that Wells Fargo has thought about implementing. I believe it was going to be a way that they can use to identify someone for being able to use their service. Let's say like at an ATM or whatnot. Now, this is a little strange because while the car thing, right, you can choose to buy a used car for as long as it can. But I think that one, it's more like it's more like you may have a bit more control as far as the Wells Fargo thing, what they want to or try to do. And it's not just Wells Fargo. I mean, this is a technology that has been talked about being implemented by many others, but you don't see it. You're not really aware of it. You could be walking through anywhere, security gate, whatever, and you may not even know you're walking through this aerosol spray. You may not know you have nanoparticles absorbed into your body or skin. And there you are. And now instantly, whether you're in a vehicle that is reading your biometrics or not, no matter where you go, there's a potential for you to be constantly monitored, scanned, your profile updated, your information recorded. And so that's interesting. So we're going to get into that too. And so it's going to be a pretty packed show. I hope I can get to everything the way I want to. Definitely going to try to stay on course and talk about it all. But let's go ahead and start with Iran. Let's talk about the current state of Iran. But before we do that, let's play a video from one of my favorite political podfluencers. By the way, podfluencer, I'm trademarking. That's my thing. I came up with that. And I've been saying it quite a bit. And I know a few people have been trying to claim it. But sorry, buddy. That's me. Podfluencer. You heard it here. I know you heard it here first. Or you read it in one of my posts. And that's mine. So anyway, so one of our favorite political commentator, podfluencers, Mr. War is Bad and There's Always a Moral Argument, Dave Smith, was recently on Piers Morgan. And according to Dave, everything that we're doing in Iran is going to be, or is, the largest U.S. failure in history. You know. So what I want to do is this. I'm going to play Davey Boy Smith, and we're going to move on to kind of debunking him a little bit or putting things into perspective for Dave. Because the thing with Dave is I do facts and data, like research, like real research. And Dave Smith primarily relies on like the great Scott Horton's pseudo PragerU library of cherry-picked facts and twisted information. And so there's that. And anyway, let's go ahead and get to good old Davey Boy Smith. All right, here you go. Give this a listen.
Not good. And I think that we're, at this point, Trump is in between a rock and a hard place. And if you remember, Pierce, about 3 weeks ago, when Donald Trump gave his, he gave a speech after the markets had closed. This was shortly before some of the more unhinged tweets and threats. And he had been signaling then that, well, essentially, he was setting it up to say, hey, listen, we don't really need the Strait. Other people's stuff flows through the Strait, not ours. And then he said, it'll just naturally open up. It'll be a matter of time. And other people, other countries can. He was basically signaling that we can walk away from this with Iran still having control over the Strait and who passes, and other people can work that out. I think the major problem there, and this is something that Marco Rubio just said in his interview yesterday, or excuse me, on Monday, that well, actually, we can't walk away if the status quo is Iran gets to decide who comes in and who doesn't, and Iran gets to decide what currency they're trading in. Because, Pierce, if we do that, the reality is then this is a loss unlike any other loss in American foreign policy history. Even if you count Vietnam or Afghanistan or those as losses, I mean, we didn't transform them from a relegated, sanctioned, crippled country into a global power. And if you control 20% of the world's oil, then you are, by definition, a global power.
Dave sounds intelligent, right? On the surface, the guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He makes a good argument based on whatever he's trying to convey to you. But let's talk about a few things there. Trump never signaled to anyone that we can just walk away and the Strait will work itself out. The point was that we're doing this and we're involved in this conflict, even though the oil or supplies or whatever product it is that comes out of the Strait of Hormuz or the Persian Gulf doesn't really affect the U.S. in terms of our needs, right? Now, we both know that, yes, Dave, even you, I know, even Dave knows, we all know that if oil goes up, because those who do rely on oil and products from that region, if that goes up, then transport of goods go up, and then it just exponentially raises the cost of everything all over the world. So, yeah, that is understood. And I think Dave has made that point, and he's correct in that. But he's wrong in the assessment that Trump was signaling that, hey, we can just walk away and this isn't our problem. There's a bigger issue with Iran, and there's a reason that we're there that Dave doesn't understand, because for him, there's always a moral argument and it's not our problem, but you literally have an evil regime who's bent on taking over the world and wants to topple the United States of America. And they've also signaled that they want to destroy Israel. And I'm not going to get into the whole Israel thing because everybody's doing every damn podcast. I was like, oh, it's Israel's fault. Israel. I'm not going there. Because it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. And to me, it's just a cop out. It's a non-argument. It's not a real rebuttal. I think it's a talking point people use because they don't know anything about the conflict. They don't have any real historical data that they can pull from because they didn't bother to do any research about the area and past conflicts and what's going on, or the intricate relationships in the region. No, they don't know anything. So their fallback is, well, it's Israel's fault, and we're only there because of Israel. And I'm not even going to keep feeding this machine. All right, I've already said enough. So if I'm just going to say, if you continue to think, if you yourself absolutely think that this is all Israel and Israel's fault, listen to me. And if you're watching, look at me. You're wrong. Okay. So getting on to rebutting Dave Smith. This is not going to be, or is not a failure of the U.S. There's a couple of things going on here that needs to be addressed, right? But let's talk about the state of Iran right now. So Dave says that this is going to be the biggest failure or military failure ever for the U.S. We're not achieving our objectives. Okay. And there's a couple of factors here. One, before I get into it, much of what Trump wants to do, I think, is based on time. I think Trump's plan was to overwhelm and force Iran to come to heel within a timeline. I think he wanted to get out of here or out of Iran in a month. And it wasn't because he was afraid. See, what he fails to understand is Trump has a history, and he said it many times. He does not accept the loss of U.S. life. He does not accept the loss of U.S. soldiers. And he doesn't want to get into a major kinetic conflict. I think what Trump wants to do is he wants to achieve policy through strength, through posturing of military strength. Now, we all know that the U.S. military is extremely strong and effective, and we could have already wiped Iran out. And even Dave Smith has said that himself. But the reason we're still there is because Trump is hesitant. Trump is afraid to take that next step because he doesn't want to get into an ugly, drawn-out, kinetic war. A war where you're facing soldier against soldier on the battlefield. Problem is, we may be coming to that soon. But before we dive into that, in fact, I might even just save that for another episode. Let's talk about what did happen and what's the state of Iran right now, because Dave seems to think that Iran has been untouched, Iran is resilient, there's nothing going on, and we've failed at everything we've done. And honestly, I mean, I gotta just say it, Dave, you just sound so fucking anti-American. It's just pathetic, dude. It's fucking pathetic. I'm sorry, you are pathetic. Your war is bad and argument and the morality of this and that argument is just, it doesn't work anymore. I think people see through it. And if you go to Dave's comment sections on social media, you're starting to see more and more people call him out and push back because they're done. Not everything is a war bad Israel's fault / moral argument. I mean, this is war. These are conflicts. I mean, there's more to it than just a black and white, we do or do not do this, or we engage this way or we don't engage. It's not like that. And Dave doesn't seem to understand that. So let's talk about the state of Iran. Let's talk about where we're at right now. So let's talk about the leadership crisis. So one of the things that was a goal of this operation was to dismantle the leadership, that primarily being with the Islamic regime, which has been done. It was an operation that was meant, Epicfury was meant to dismantle the leadership, cause confusion, and basically fragment their decision making. And this has absolutely been achieved. So I'm going to be reading from my assessment here. Leadership crisis and the rise of the barracks state. So the internal political landscape of Iran is currently defined by fragmentation and the erosion of traditional civilian clerical authority. And that's very important because right now the decisions seem to be made from a military standpoint, primarily by the IRGC. So the succession and fragmentation. So let's start there. And this is primarily to do with the Islamic regime and their sense of power, or the lack of power they have now. So here's the Khamenei vacuum. So the assassination of Ali Khamenei on February 28th, 2026 removed the central arbiter of the Iranian state. His successor, his son, by the way, Mojtaba Khamenei, who was elected on March 8th, 2026, he doesn't have his father's religious authority. He doesn't have a stature, and he's leading to vanished discipline among competing power centers. Okay. So, because he lacks the religious authority, the stature, and everything that his father had, it seems that the Islamic regime is slowly losing control of power to other players right now. Okay. Now, there's another interesting fact, though. Mojtaba Khamenei has not been seen. It is rumored he's already been killed. There was a mural that was up on one of the walls that was put, and it showed the past leaders of the Islamic regime, and Mojtaba Khamenei was actually up there. His picture was up there. Now, that could have been AI. Again, I've said that I did not confirm that, but I'm just going to keep bringing it up because we haven't seen him. There's rumors that he's been disfigured. He lost a limb. Whatever the case is, some say he's been in a coma. We don't know. We do know that he was being treated in a Russian hospital for his injuries. But aside from that, we're not quite sure if he is dead. Regardless, he hasn't been seen. A leader that is not seen, that is not showing his face to his people and his followers, can't lead. You can't lead from a closet. You can't lead from the darkness. So the Islamic regime in and of itself is losing its credibility and losing its power. Now, moving on to the second point here in the fragmentation succession, or the succession and fragmentation. The decapitation attrition, and yes, there is an attrition going on in leadership. So let's talk about this. High-ranking officials, including the Minister of Defense, Minister of Intelligence, Secretary of the SNSC, they've all been killed. They're resulting in a paralyzed leadership and disrupted decision-making, which we have been seeing. So from the non-clerical, from the civilian leadership roles, right, from that sector of leadership, it's been very fragmented. They can't make a decision. But in the end, everybody knows that the Islamic regime, the clerics themselves, are the ones who really pull the strings. And so between the Islamic regime and the lack of any civilian structured leadership, that leaves the IRGC. So with that being said, there's an elite divergence. So there's an intense internal power struggle. It's led to a breakdown of diplomatic cohesion. Pragmatists like President Masoud Pezeshkian, I think I mispronounced it, but regardless, have been sidelined by, as I said, the IRGC, with military hardliners frequently overriding civilian diplomatic initiatives. So exactly what I was just saying, right? So what's up with the IRGC? Well, the regime has evolved into a barrack state where the IRGC exercises decisive control over governance. So right now, it's really the IRGC making the decisions or calling the shots based on their military capabilities and from a strategic military assessment of what's happening and how things are progressing. The IRGC has been the gatekeeper, right? So they're the Major General Ahmad Vahidi has emerged as the primary gatekeeper to the new supreme leader, which is interesting because Mojtaba Khamenei hasn't been seen, and it seems like anything that has to do with Khamenei right now has to go through General Ahmad Vahidi, and he's like the primary mediator between the Islamic regime leadership, primarily Mojtaba Khamenei, and I guess anybody else, right? So the internal security also is facing a hyperinflation, and there's a potential popular uprising. The regime maintains a near total internet blackout to this day, still complete internet blackout, and relies on, again, the IRGC to suppress dissent through force and controlled propaganda. And I've already discussed this many times. In fact, I'm just going to put this out there. I have been talking about Iran for a long time. A long time. I've talked to many people from Iran whose families were from Iran, journalists who were from Iran, resistance leaders from Iran. I have talked to many people. I've talked to intelligence professionals who are still in the intelligence community that know the Middle East. And I've gotten some information from them as well. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think Iran is going to give in. Now, while we have had a success in dismantling their leadership, the IRGC is going to be a tough nut to crack because it is a militant arm, the militant arm of the Islamic regime. In fact, they're taking over and taking control of Iran at this very moment. As far as leadership goes, they're very well trained, they're armed, and they're going to fight long and fight hard. I think that the Islamic regime themselves may be willing to make a deal before the IRGC gives in. The problem is the IRGC seems to be calling the shots. So this leaves any negotiations, any deals that may be on the table. I think we're just going to see a constant state of, show me yours, I'll show you mine, but we're not going to come to terms. We're just doing this because, it puts people at ease for a week or two or whatever. But I don't think it's ever going to happen. Now, as far as the leadership, Dave Smith, getting back to Davey Boy, the leadership crisis, the toppling of the leadership, the dissent, the disorganization, the lack of control, the lack of any clear, cohesive policy or decision making on behalf of Iran, that has been achieved. That has happened. That is real. So, Davey Boy, you're wrong on that one. The other point of this conflict, Dave Smithy, Davey Boy, is that we were trying to economically squeeze the Islamic regime. Why? Glad you asked, Dave. Because if we take away their source of funding, we take away their ability to operate. They can't manufacture weapons. They can't buy weapons. And more importantly, they can't fund their terrorist proxies. Money runs the world, but in the case of the Islamic regime, it truly does make operations run smooth. And in fact, without it, there are no operations. So, point number 2, Dave, another achievement, the economic stranglehold or strangulation of the Islamic regime. Let's read some of that. So here's the economic implosion. At the moment, they're in survival, life support. The U.S. naval blockade and the economic fury campaign have triggered a multi-dimensional economic collapse. Oh, say it ain't so, Dave Smith. Say it ain't so. So here's the metric. Current status as of April, May 2026. Okay. So GDP losses are at 40%. They're losing $144 billion in under 2 months. And it's estimated they're losing about that much nearly at a month at a time. So I would say that's pretty significant, Dave. The inflation rate also. So it has forced inflation in Iran up to 53.7%, which is the highest since World War II. Food inflation is greater than 115%. Currency value, 1.84 million rials or reals per US dollar. So it takes $1 million of theirs to equal one of ours, Dave. I would say that's another major, major blow economically. And here's the big one, the daily revenue loss, Davey boy. The daily revenue loss. 435 million every single day. Every single day, the Islamic regime is losing $435 million, Dave Smith. And here's another thing, Dave Smith, that you never talk about. You know that money, like the money that they get from the oil, by the way, that is being controlled by blockading the Strait of Hormuz, that money funds over 45% of their government, which they can't access because they're not getting it. There is no revenue right now. And in fact, their storage on Karg Island right now, it's full or very damn near, which also means they're going to be in trouble in terms of producing oil because where's that oil going to go and be stored? So, Davey boy, seems like we achieved two objectives so far, which is the toppling of their leadership, the disarray in decision making, and we've also created a bit of an internal power struggle by removing major heads of leadership in Iran. So, objective one achieved. Objective two, the strangulation of their economic situation, basically, strangulation of their economy. Objective two achieved. They're losing $435 million a day. They can't access the money they need from the oil sales, which contributes to 45% of the budget they need to run their actual government. Without the money, they're also not able to fund proxies. They're also not able to buy weapons, manufacture weapons, grease any palms, etc. So I would say objective two achieved, Dave Smith. So that's my 2 to your 0. Gotcha. Now let's move on to the fractured alliances and external support. So the axis of resistance is adapting to the financial logistical suffocation of Tehran. There's a proxy self-sufficiency, which I kind of touched on this. So funding strains, the Iranian regime is struggling to meet basic domestic financial obligations, leading to a reduction in stipends for foreign militias, or what is that, Dave? What? Terrorist proxies? That's right. So it looks like we're achieving objective number 3 or a third objective here. I mean, look, Dave, if there's any failure, the failure will be Congress handcuffing Trump from being able to push further militarily. Once we get to that time, I believe 60, 90 days, we're already at about the 60. I think it's around the 90. And I feel like an idiot because I should absolutely know the actual date, but I think it's 90 days. There needs to be an extension approved by Congress. Okay. Congress needs to either say this is a war or you can continue military action, military operations, etc., whatever you want to coin it. And Congress is going to be the only thing that's going to stand between Trump and the Islamic regime. The only thing that's going to save Iran's ass is U.S. Congress, if we're being honest with ourselves. So it seems like all the objectives as of now, the objectives, Dave Smith, the biggest failure that the U.S. has ever had militarily or strategically in a conflict, our ability to do what we say, to actually achieve something, Dave, has been achieved. Iranian leadership toppled. Islamic regime's economic status, the money they need to operate, choked, gone. The ability to fund external militias, military, namely their proxies, gone. And even their allies. Now, we know that Russia is helping Iran with intelligence. They may even be sending them some additional weapons, etc. But we also know that Iran is like, they've lost 40% of their attack drone force. Like, they're down 40%. And that's significant. And they can't reproduce them because everything that they needed, their major facilities to reproduce these drones, these Shahed drones, been wiped out. Their air defense is almost like nothing, worthless. They don't really have one. Russia's trying to help them out with some of that, but it's damn gone. And let's talk about their Navy, which a lot of people don't understand. Everyone's always online, including Dave. I thought their Navy was wiped out. They said it was wiped out, and they're lying to us. No, they're not lying, Dave Smith. So what happened is all their major large-scale ships are at the bottom of the ocean. What they have left are their small speedboats, which is, I would say, what do you call it? Like their mosquito force, right? And so what they're relying on right now is being able to swarm large vessels with multiples of this type of, high-speed attack boats, these small attack boats. Now, is it an effective strategy? Yeah, it can be. I mean, can you imagine running through a bunch of trees and hitting a beehive, and then you got 1,000 bees on you stinging you? That's a bad situation. You could die from that. And in turn, this swarm tactic that Iran uses with these speedboats could absolutely be effective as well. Problem is, they got to get close enough to any of our vessels to do anything. And before they get there, we have air superiority. Don't forget, we have aircraft carriers out there. So, things like, I don't know, F-35s, helicopters, etc. We still have the A-10 Warthog out there. It's going to be very highly unlikely that their speedboats are going to be very effective, although they could be. It could be. So I'm not saying they aren't entirely defenseless, but they do have that. So let's keep going here, Dave. So what does Iran really have? What do they really have right now when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz? They have shore-to-sea missiles. So they do have that. They still have a decent stockpile of those and launchers. But again, not really much that the U.S. air capabilities can take care of. And here's the thing. What will really secure the strait, and I'd hate to say it, is going to be boots on the ground. The one thing President Trump is absolutely trying to avoid. Why? Because as I said earlier in the show already, Trump doesn't want to see U.S. military personnel die. He doesn't want to see them fight face to face. He doesn't want to see them on the battlefield. He would rather take care of this at a distance using superior technology, superior armaments, superior targeting. That's what he's trying to do here. So, Dave, do me a favor. Do at least like a Google search or something. You look good when you give your argument. You do, because you look confident and you talk very well and you're eloquent. But I mean, your assessments have been pretty off, man. I like your domestic takes. I like when you talk about domestic politics, but the geopolitics is not your bag, baby. You just need to leave that alone. All right. You really just don't know what the hell you're talking about. And speaking of people who don't know what they're talking about, I got another one for you guys. The good old Tim Dillon. Tim Delano. So Timmy, who I refer to as the adult version of Cartman. You don't believe me? All right, watch this. If you're watching the video here, here's Cartman. Right there. There's Cartman. That's the real life grown up Cartman. Even his voice sounds like Cartman, right? Not as whiny as a little kid, but like the adult version of Cartman. Look at this guy. What's with the fucking sunglasses, Tim? Now, a lot of people like this guy. I don't know why. I've tried to listen. And the problem with Tim is all of his assessments, all of his opinions are based on feelings. Like literally feelings. Like they are. I feel this way and America feels that way. And, if it wasn't for this and what? Oh, and of course, it's Israel's fault. I know. Israel. Another one of those dudes. And so it's like, Tim boy. I don't know. I don't know what it is about you comedians that think that, you're God's gift basically to political commentary. But I mean, you're just not. And no one's going to tell you this. No one has told you this, which is why you're still up there with your sunglasses and your feelings, talking shit, when you clearly don't know what it is exactly you're talking about. But I know you got a lot of fans, and I'm sure people listening to this are already hating me for talking about good old, Tim Dillon. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to play this, and we're going to listen to him talk about his feelings. Here we go.
Because we're not getting out of this. This thing's not going to go. This thing's not going our way. And you know that. You can feel it. You can feel that it's not going our way. You can feel that it's not working. You can feel that Trump wants out of it. You can feel it. This is not what he does. He's not a real fighter.
I didn't count, but I mean, how many times did he mention everything is based on what you can feel? So basically, Tim believes that we're not getting at, like, this whole thing's a mess because he feels it's a mess. But let's keep listening to Tim's feelings.
He's like a shit talker. He's a casino kingpin. He's a reality star. And if you like reality stars, we're selling actually pretty well there at the Wiltern Theater.
That's interesting. So he's criticizing Trump, saying all he is a shit talker, reality star, etc. Kind of rich coming from a shit talking, sunglass wearing comedian whose whole shtick is shit talking and stirring the pot. Cool. Gotcha.
But that's what he does. This is not Patton. He's not a general. He's a reality star. He's a shit talker. He's very comfortable in that game. Late night, firing off tweets at Elizabeth Warren. That's his game. Talking shit with Mika and Joe, Morning Joe. He's comfortable doing that all day long. No, a rally? Forget it. Standing there for 3 hours talking extemporaneously off the cuff, he's all in. And that's what he does. This is not where he shines. And he feels uncomfortable. You can tell he's not happy about this because this is not what he does.
Okay, so Tim's criticism is all based on his feelings. And Tim believes that Trump is not effective because he's a shit-talking talk show host, which is pot calling the kettle black here. I mean, Tim's not really a talk show host. Well, I guess he is, right? He has his podcast. That's being a talk show host, just what they are these days. Tim Dillon talks shit. Tim Dillon doesn't understand politics. Tim Dillon's assessments are based on his feelings, kind of like the bowel movements he has in the morning or the texture of the jelly donut going down his throat that he can feel, I guess. But regardless, Tim, sorry, I don't know why I keep wanting to say Cartman, but Tim Dillon is a popular, extremely popular, I don't know how, but political commentator who puts feelings before facts. He thinks Trump is not going to make it. He thinks Trump doesn't know what he's doing here. But Trump is being very effective, as I just read earlier. He's already achieved some objectives. Now, I'm not going to get in the argument as to whether or not we should still be there. Should we have ever been there? I have my own feelings and opinions on that. But Tim Dillon represents what is often said way too often and by these podfluencers and these online influencers, whatever you want to call them. They have half-baked understandings of what is actually happening in the world. And I mean, it's one thing to talk about what's in your own backyard, what bar you go to, what you drink, smoke, etc. I mean, great, how it felt going to work today, driving your car, etc. Like, these are things that you have real interaction with, things that you can control. But I mean, you get outside of that small little world that these guys like Tim Dillon, Dave Smith live in. I mean, I got to be honest, it goes south very fast. So let's talk about Project Freedom here. Okay. So Project Freedom and the Strait of Hormuz navigation initiative. So this was announced by President Trump on May 3rd, which was yesterday of this recording. So May 3rd, 2026. Project Freedom is characterized by the administration as a humanitarian process designed to restore navigation for neutral parties affected by the ongoing conflict. Now, that being said, I'm going to interject here because I already know what someone like Timmy Dillon would say. Like, well, we wouldn't have had a problem if they didn't make it a problem. Well, I'm going to get to that too, Timmy, when we talk about Iran versus Oman. Hang in there, Mr. Dillon. Okay, so regardless of what Tim said, regardless of his feelings, here's the operational scope and execution. So the target demographics. The initiative aims to rescue 20,000 seafarers and hundreds of commercial ships stranded in the Persian Gulf since February 28th, 2026. One-way transit policy. So the navigation under this project is strictly outward. Okay. Vessels escorted out of the Strait of Hormuz are prohibited from returning until the waterway is officially declared safe for general navigation. Mine clearance operations. So they've already performed a few mine clearance operations, but Iran keeps going out there, or the IRGC keeps going out there and putting more mines out. So beginning April 11th of 2026, the U.S. Central Command utilized guided missile destroyers and underwater drones to clear naval mines previously deployed by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They've got a lot of them, but they're going to continue to do so. Since April 11th, they've been doing this. IRGC keeps putting more out. So this operation involving clearing mines is going to continue. So let's talk about the military assets. Although initially framed as a coordination framework, the operation now involves the full military weight of CENTCOM. Now, it was not the full weight of CENTCOM before. Right now, we're looking at the ability for CENTCOM to tap into 15,000 service members, over 100 aircraft, and multiple guided missile destroyers. And here's the strategic and economic objectives. So, market stabilization. The announcement of the project led to a 2% drop in global oil prices as the release of trapped crude oil signaled a partial restoration of the corridor. Counter blockade. The initiative seeks to undermine Iran's ability to collect tolls from transitioning ships and challenges its dominance over the strategic choke point. And here's the security enforcement. The U.S. has issued formal warnings that any interference with Project Freedom will be dealt with forcefully. So as I said previously that Trump is afraid of any major kinetic conflicts, it may seem that after not getting what he wanted by posturing, by basically just a show of force, it sounds like he's considering the inevitable, which seems to be the inevitable, which is a kinetic conflict, an all-out kinetic conflict. Not just strategic missiles and bombs. We're talking about face-to-face troops. We're talking about an increase in the use of military assets to enforce the Strait of Hormuz, enforce the operations right now by the U.S. against Iran. And so here's what's important here. The U.S. and Iran are not coming to an agreement. So this is also what sparked the announcement of the Project Freedom here. You see, the U.S. has, let's start here. Let's start with the Iranian 14-point peace framework. Let's just do that. So they had a 14-point plan. It was separated in three phases. And this was presented via Pakistani mediators in May 2026. And I'm going to read phase one. So phase one was the immediate de-escalation, non-aggression. So a formal pact between Iran, the United States, and Israel. There would be an end to the blockade. So immediate cessation of the U.S. naval blockade and economic strangulation of Iran. So even in this 14-point peace framework plan, or this plan that Iran has presented, they have admitted to being economically strangled. So they're already admitting in this 14-point framework, this 14-point plan that they have proposed, that some of the objectives that Dave Smith said we're not achieving have been achieved, and Iran is feeling the weight of the U.S. military. That being the blockade, which is choking off their economic abilities. Okay. And they don't want any more aggression. They want to not be involved in any more aggression between Iran and Israel against against each other and the United States, by the way. So they don't want to be able to anymore get into any conflict with the United States and Israel. Okay, so the Strait of Hormuz, this is all still part of phase one. They want to reopen the waterway to international commerce. Of course they do. Why? They need the money. I feel like I just keep repeating myself here, right? So phase two of Iran's proposed plan, nuclear and economic settlement. So Iran said they'll enter into a 15-year freeze on uranium enrichment, followed by a permanent cap of 3.6%. Iran explicitly rejects the dismantlement of any nuclear infrastructure. Also part of phase two, financial redress. So the full lifting of all sanctions, the release of all frozen assets, and the payment of war reparations for damages caused by military and economic pressure. That's not going to happen. But that's part of phase two. And they also want to manage the stockpile. So the dilution of existing enriched uranium to civilian grade levels or transfer to other countries. They want to manage that uranium. They want to have a hand in either the dilution or the transfer. Because what they would want is they'd want to see that uranium transferred to their allies, namely Russia or China, for example, so that they can then still have access to that said uranium. Phase three of Iran's proposed plan is the regional security and diplomacy. So the U.S. withdrawal, that's not going to happen either. They want the U.S. to remove all military forces from the region surrounding Iran. Again, we already know that's not going to happen. They look for regional peace. So at an end to the hostilities on all fronts, specifically including the conflict in Lebanon, which is crazy that they would specifically want that to end. Why? Hezbollah. That's right. One of their proxies, who is now under fire and attack by Israel. They want to be able to ensure that their outward military partners in the area, namely the terrorist proxy groups, they still have access to them, that they're still standing for them to be able to, use, let's just be honest. So that's why they're specifically saying we need to stop the conflict in Lebanon because, well, Hezbollah's their most skilled, trained, and armed proxy. And here's the other part of the third phase three. They want international oversight. Now they want it, but they want a new management mechanism of the Strait of Hormuz and a strategic dialogue with Arab states, with Russia and China acting as enforcers of the agreement. So they want to remove the U.S. completely from being an arbitrator and or having any kind of oversight in the area. They want that to be managed by their allies, China and Russia. Well, why would they want that? Because it would all go in their favor. And with the strength and might of Russia and China behind them, they can strong arm their Arab neighbors to do exactly whatever it is that Iran wants. And so this whole 14-point plan that was presented was rejected by President Trump, which led to the announcement of Project Freedom. Now, Project Freedom is also supposed to be there, as it stated earlier, to guide ships out. The ones that have been trapped, they want to get them out of the area. They want to remove them from harm. Look, whatever you got, take it home, get out of here, but don't come back. And in doing so, he's getting rid of any potential collateral damage if a major conflict does break out in the area. He doesn't want this. He doesn't want the tankers that are sitting there from other countries to basically be damaged or to add to the situation between the U.S. and its allies and other nation states right now. Because if any of these tankers were destroyed, if any of their personnel killed, etc., it's very easy to point the finger at the U.S., this conflict, and basically say it was the U.S.'s fault. And that in and of itself could turn these other nations towards China, Russia, and maybe even Iran. So there's the reason that Project Freedom was announced. And this is why Project Freedom has been proposed. So, and so to counter Timmy Boy, his feelings don't matter because we got to deal with the facts. And the facts are this. The Strait of Hormuz, technically, legally, is not Iran's to control, by the way. Okay? The truth of the matter, the facts over feelings, Tim, God, I keep saying Cartman, Tim Dillon, the facts over your feelings is Iran wants to aggressively control the area by bringing in its strategic partners, namely Russia and China, as the two major nations who carry out the oversight of the area, which they can use to strong arm their Arab neighbors to bend the knee to Iran and pressure them to continue to do whatever it is that Iran wants to Iran's benefit. Also, facts over feelings, Timmy, is that Trump knows that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And if Iran, based on their 14-point peace framework here, has any kind of oversight as to how the uranium is diluted or distributed, Iran's absolutely going to say, well, we want all the uranium to go to Russia or China. Why? Well, so they can get it back. Let's just be honest. So regardless of how you feel, Tim, the only thing I can tell you based on your feelings and as to whether or not Trump has the stomach is that might be the only point you have. Because Trump, again, and I've said this already a few times, doesn't want to see American military personnel die. He wants to limit the casualties. He's never wanted to see U.S. military personnel die. He's said it many times. It's the one thing he's trying to avoid. And again, he was hoping that the show of force was enough to bring Iran to heel. But unfortunately, we may have to take the next step. So, Timmy Boy, facts don't give a fuck about your feelings. All right. So, continuing on the Iran train and Tim, Dillon, whatever. You like him, good, whatever. I'm just tired of hearing these blowhard motherfuckers like Davey Boy Smith and Tim Cartman Dillon and Cenk Uygur. Like all of these guys, even Owen Schroyer has been a whiny bitch these days. They're all saying the anti-American thing. They're all lockstep, patting each other on the back. America bad, Trump idiot, etc. And I don't agree with everything Trump says or does, but none of these fuckers, none. Cenk, Tim Dillon, Dave Smith, Owen Schroyer, none of them know what the fuck they're talking about. Yes, even you, Owen. You guys don't know what you're talking about. You cherry pick and twist history and some facts to make yourself shine and look like you know what you're talking about, but you don't understand what's happening here. And when push comes to shove, all you say is war bad and it's Israel's fault. And that's all you got. You don't have any deep understanding of what's happening. So do yourselves a favor. Reach out beyond your little bubbles you've created. And maybe, just maybe, through interacting with other people, maybe even people who are actually from Iran, people who are from the area, maybe some intelligence. Oh, you guys don't know any. Oh, never mind. You don't have that ability, which is crazy because you guys are all like bigger than I am. But yet I can do the due diligence and do the work to get the information out. But yet you guys are so fucking sloppy and lazy that you continue to push these talking points, this fucking coordinated narrative to keep yourselves relevant, because all you're doing is playing on emotion and you really don't care about the facts of the situation. That's it. That being said, I'm done with those guys. That being said, let's continue on to the next point I was going to make about the Strait of Hormuz, which again addresses Tim Dillon's feelings, and addresses Dave Smith's half-baked, well, not even half-baked, very wrong assessment, geopolitical assessment here. Nobody's been talking about this, by the way, guys. Nobody's been talking about this. I do not know why. But when we're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, there's a joint custody there on the enforcement, okay? And the reality is the Strait of Hormuz, you know what? Let me bring up a graphic here that'll help me explain this to you. So I'm sorry. For those that are listening, I'll do my best to explain. I encourage you to watch the video version. You can go to YouTube, my channel. Fonts Ablaze, @Fonts Ablaze is my handle. World Ablaze with George Fonts. Just look it up. You should be able to find it. If you prefer to watch Spotify, I do load the videos on Spotify. But anyway, I'm starting to ramble. I just want you to know, you can find the visual version of this, the video. So I encourage you to watch it. But anyway, here's a graphic. This is going to explain a few things here. Okay. So here's the Strait of Hormuz, and what you see here is you see a 21-mile right here choke point right between Oman and Iran. Now there's an overlapping 12-mile claims, which leaves no international waters. Okay, and it looks like what the deal is Iran, because they have the military prowess. They have been antagonizing everybody that goes through this strait. Now, the transit passage here, the reality is most of the shipping lanes, the major shipping lanes here, I don't know if I'm going to arrow over here. The major shipping lanes, they reside in the Omani territory. Yet Iranian forces frequently intercept vessels there. And the issue we have is Oman is really just kind of like the Switzerland of the Middle East. And so because they are passive in nature and they want to have these amazing relationships with both the West and as well as with Iran and everybody else, they allow Iran to just steamroll them. The reality is, again, the major shipping lanes through the strait actually go through Omani territorial waters, or the territorial waters of Oman. Oman does have a military, but they choose to be very passive in their approach. Iran has a military capability through their speedboats and their missiles and launchers to drive all the way into the Omani territory, or the Oman territorial waters. And so they have been bullying everybody through the Strait of Hormuz, even though they have no claim to the territorial side of Oman, even though all major shipping lanes travel through territorial waters of Oman. But Oman will not push back. What's crazy about this is Oman also has relationships with Britain, France, etc., who also are strategic military partners who both have done shit all or a fuck all. They haven't done anything in all the years that Iran has existed, or at least the Islamic regime has existed. They've done nothing. Nothing. There's a level of complacency from Europe, from the European allies of Oman, for whatever reason. And it's really not clear as to why, other than they're just afraid to enforce the area with Oman. And Oman is very passive. Okay, so the thing about the strait is, does Iran have any legal claim? Do they have the right to actually enforce a blockade or a $2 million toll or stop any vessels? And the answer is no, they don't. They literally don't. So let me go ahead and open up my assessment here. We're going to read through some of this here. Okay, so here's the strategic dynamics and sovereignty challenges in the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so I'm just going to read through this because it took time to put it together. And so I'm going to read it for you. So here you go. Here's my executive summary on this. So the Strait of Hormuz remains one of the world's most contested maritime choke points, characterized by a complex interplay between the Omani territorial rights, as I just said, and Iranian military assertiveness. So despite the primary international shipping lanes, which again go through Omani or Oman's territorial waters, Iran exercises significant de facto control through military leverage, aggressive patrolling, and the imposition of unilateral regulatory regimes. Current intelligence from 2025 and 2026 indicates a worsening trend of Iranian encroachment on Omani sovereignty. And again, challenging Oman's territorial waters is challenging Omani's sovereignty. But moving on, this includes the seizure. This is interesting. I forgot about this. This actually includes the seizure of a vessel within Omani waters. The implementation of unauthorized transit tolls, which, that's where the $2 million toll comes from, which is per vessel, and the deployment of a military doctrine designed to completely surround the waterway. Oman, maintaining a policy of active neutrality, balances these pressures through a multifaceted defense architecture involving long-standing Western alliances, the UK and US, and of course, France as well. And there's also emerging Indo-Pacific partners, such as India. And there's the functional security ties with Tehran itself. So the security ties with Tehran is really an appeasement to Iran to avoid any major conflict, because Oman doesn't want to get into any major kinetic conflict with Iran, being that Iran has a much more superior, a much bigger military, and their capabilities are much stronger. Although Oman has strategic military relationships with the UK, which is honestly their oldest Western ally, by the way. Yet we haven't heard a peep from the UK in any conflict, any encroachment, anything that Iran has done to challenge Oman's sovereignty. The UK has been silent. And I'm not just talking about the conflict here in 2026. I'm talking about throughout history. They haven't really done much of shit to back Oman. So I'm going to keep reading this here. And so let's keep going. Let's talk about the geography, the geographic and territorial framework here. Okay. So this is important. The Strait of Hormuz is defined by extreme geographic proximity and overlapping legal claims that complicate unilateral control. So there's the width and the overlap here. At its narrowest point, the strait is only 21 nautical miles wide. Iran and Oman claim 12 nautical mile territorial sea, okay, resulting in a total overlap of 24 nautical miles. Consequently, there's no corridor or high seas or international waters in the middle of the strait. So there's no international waters. There's no like non-territorial waters. There's an overlap of territory, right? I don't know if you can see this. I'm kind of blocking my face, but you have Oman. Sorry, I got the background. Okay, Oman, Iran. These are their territorial waters, and you can see where they meet. But there's a part of the strait where they actually overlap, which makes it complicated. Okay. So, in 1974, there was a boundary agreement. The maritime border was established via 1974 agreement. It was ratified in 1975, and it actually regards the continental shelf itself. So the boundary consists of 22 turning points extending almost 125 nautical miles. It's 124.85 nautical miles. It follows a median line generally, which is a specific 3 nautical mile overlap that exists between Iran's Larak Island and Oman's Greater Kwan Island. So the island control situation here, though, Iran does control 7 or 8 major islands in the strait, as well as some strategical, vital other islands that where they're positioned at So aside from like Hormuz itself, Keshem, and Larak, they also have the strategic vital Tums and the Abu Musa, and I'm sure I mispronounced all of those, but they have these other islands that allow Iran to project surveillance and military force directly over the navigational of the channel. That's a lot, right? So far, what you're hearing, I hope you're getting, aside from me not pronouncing half these names probably correctly, is that Iran has a history of encroaching on Oman. Iran has a history of challenging Oman's sovereignty. So far, from what I've read and what I'm telling you, is Iran doesn't have a right to patrol, restrict, or close off the Strait of Hormuz. They just don't. It's not theirs. The major shipping lanes don't even go through their territorial waters. But because Oman is so passive, they rely on their relationships, their Western allies and their relationships, their oldest one being the UK themselves. Yet nobody wants to challenge Iran or push back. Why? Because they're afraid of the conflict. Bottom line. That doesn't mean Iran has the right. All right, so let's keep going. I kind of touched on it a little bit. So let's go over the navigational control and shipping lanes. So the physical, and if you're watching, I'm highlighting right here, using my cursor right here. The physical location of shipping lanes is a primary point of contention as they reside almost exclusively under Omani jurisdiction at the strait's most critical juncture. The internationally recognized TSS, or the Traffic Separation Scheme, adopted by the International Maritime Organization, or the IMO, organizes safe passage for large tankers. At the strait's narrowest point, both the inbound, which is the northern, which is more towards Iran, and the outbound southern channels, which lie entirely within Omani territorial waters or sea. This is due to the greater depth of the water near the Musandam Peninsula. So, again, the major navigational channels here go through Omani territorial waters here. Now, there's been a shift during 2026 because of the crisis. So, the heightened tensions have forced significant changes in maritime behavior. The avoidance of Iran by mid-2025 and into 2026, the shipping patterns shifted further south. So vessels began hugging the Omani coastline and moving into the Emirati territorial waters to avoid Iranian territory entirely. And then there's the competing schemes here. So Iran has attempted to challenge Omani control by unveiling its own competing. So there's Iran again making it up, right? Like, no, we don't agree with any of it, so we're going to do it this way, and you're all going to just fall in line. Okay. But anyway, they're unveiling its own competing TSS situation in Iranian waters, threatening ships that do not coordinate with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC. And then there's the encroachment and lawfare. So Iran utilizes a combination of physical force and legal maneuvering to undermine Omani sovereignty and extract economic concessions. So those being the tolls, the $2 million toll fees, the challenge of Omani sovereignty by encroaching on their territorial waters and trying to enforce their own policy, their policing in Omani territory. And here's the violations of the Omani jurisdiction. So there's been the vessel seizures. Iranian forces have a history of intercepting foreign vessels within Omani territorial waters. Notable precedent from 2019, seizure of the Stena Impero, which Iranian authorities later admitted that it occurred outside of their waters, outside of Iranian waters. There's a bouncing tactic. So the IRGC Navy vessels frequently approach merchant ships in Omani waters. So what they'll do is they'll rush out, come back in a way to threaten and intimidate these ships and get them to accept them to board and conduct inspections, which basically just ignores entirely the established maritime borders. And then there's the unauthorized tolls. So Iran has recently institutionalized a Tehran toll, charging up to $2 million per vessel because ships must use lanes in Omani waters to the choke point. So The problem here in responding to, again, Dave Smith and Tim Cartman Dillon is that Iran doesn't even have a right to enforce anything in the Strait as it is anyway. Iran has been acting illegally for, I don't know, maybe 47 years or so, ever since the Islamic regime has been in place. They have never had a right. Let's just say since 1974, since the agreement of the separation of the territorial waters. Let's just say that. Let's just say since 1974 at least, Iran has been challenging Omani sovereignty. Iran has been militarily antagonizing and bullying Oman by antagonizing ships that primarily travel through Omani territorial waters. Iran has no right whatsoever, never did. So for those who are arguing that we shouldn't be there because it's Iran's choice, it's Iran's right to control their own strait, it's not their fucking strait. No one's talked about this. That strait is supposed to be a joint custodial relationship between Iran and Oman. And the fact that the major shipping lanes actually travel primarily through Omani territorial waters, really furthermore enforces the fact that Iran has been the illegal aggressor the entire time, at least since 1974, when the boundaries were established or ratified in 1975. So, you all don't have an argument here. Oman's major Western allies are the UK and the US, and thus far the UK has done fuck all. The US is doing something, okay? The argument of whether we should be there or not doesn't hold any actual water. It doesn't. We should be there. We should be there because the UK isn't. The UK hasn't been doing anything. The UK was fine to be complicit and let Oman and their sovereignty be challenged by Iran constantly. Oman is trying to stay neutral because they don't have a large military force. They cannot compete with Iran's military. They know this. Okay. They're trying to be or remain to be the Switzerland of the Middle East. And while that's a position that many people like Dave E. Boy Smith advocate for the US and being neutral, let's take care of ourselves and let's not have engaged in any conflict, the dangers in that particular policy put you in a position to be just like Oman, where you have to constantly be the nice guy just so that you're not overrun, attacked, and dismantled. And unfortunately, Oman's position has put them where they're at by constantly trying to appease the larger, more powerful, evil aggressor, Iran, to keep peace. And that's what's happening. So basically, where I'm going with all this, what I have said, is Iran has been illegally encroaching on Omani sovereignty and illegally antagonizing ships and illegally boarding ships and illegally inspecting ships since at least 1974, or let's say 75, when it was ratified, when the territories, the waterways, the territorial waters were established between Oman and Iran. And with that being said, I think I'm done with Iran right now because I feel like I'm just talking into the void. No matter how much facts and data I present and how many times I debunk all these fucking idiots' arguments, it doesn't matter because these guys have the audience for whatever reason because they're just appealing to feelings. They don't have any real substance behind their arguments. They don't have any real facts and data to back up anything outside of their feelings. And it's unfortunate that people are being misled. Now, does our pocketbook hurt right now? Fuck yeah, it does. Do I like it? No, I don't. But should Iran continue to do what they do? No. Should the Islamic regime continue to exist? Fuck no. Something has to happen. There hasn't been peace in the Middle East at least since the Islamic regime came into power in 1978. Okay? And so the reality is that they have, for the last 47 years, challenging Omani territorial waters. Okay. These territorial waters have been ratified in 1975 before the Islamic regime came to power. And Iran has been antagonizing and encroaching, at least the Islamic regime has. They have been bullying Oman and everybody who uses those waterways. And Iran doesn't like that they no longer have control. I know everybody thinks they have control. They're saying Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. No, they actually don't. Because if they did, they'd have money. They'd be able to pay their proxies. They'd be able to buy weapons. They'd be able to continue to produce their drones. They would be able to remain in power. There would be a power struggle between the Islamic regime and the IRGC. And so now I'm really going to wrap this up. With all that being said, Timmy Dillon and Davey Boy Smith, you guys need to just stick to comedy and shut the fuck up. All right, guys. We're now at the home stretch here. All right. So let's move on to some other kind of far out there things that we didn't think would ever happen, but are happening. And I'm talking about the cars, the vehicles that you're going to be buying in 2027 moving forward. They're all going to be, basically, you're going to be driving a vehicle that is imposing a surveillance state on you. We're talking about vehicles that will be implementing biometric systems that are going to analyze your behavior. They're going to analyze your emotional state. They're going to actually test the alcohol in your breath without you even knowing they're doing it. It's going to do all these things, and it's going to be recording your data. And so let's kind of go over that a bit. So let's start here. I'm going to start with the biometric and behavioral monitoring systems. Okay, so starting with biometrics, modern vehicles utilize a multimodal approach to monitor occupants, often employing sensors that require no active participation from the driver. So basically meaning like you don't even know it's happening. It's happening. It's already doing it. A lot of ways they do it are this. So let's talk about camera-based driver monitoring, which is also called DMS. It's a standardized in vehicles with advanced automation. Infrared cameras are the primary tool for assessing driver state. So they do this through visual attentiveness. Systems track eye gaze. All right, so eye gaze, blink rate, okay, and perclose, which is percentage of eyelid closure, to identify fatigue or distraction. So just based on your eyes, how your eyes look and what they're doing, if you blink too fast, whatever, they can determine that you're either not paying attention or you're sleepy. There's also going to be physical indicators. So cameras from manufacturers like BMW, Ford, and Genesis ensure the driver is focused on the roadway. Facial and emotional analysis. So advanced algorithms analyze facial features to detect stress, sudden illness, or high-level emotional states. Now, the high-level emotional state is an interesting one because that's going to lead into later where we talk about the kill switch. Because if your emotional state is too high, it could be deemed that you are not fit to drive a vehicle and your vehicle won't even start. And I got a scenario for you on that one. So let's talk about the physiological and in-cabin clinics. So there's going to be vital sign cameras, systems developed by Philips to use color changes in the skin to monitor heart and respiration rates without physical contact. This is trippy. They're going to start using also radar-based sensing. Companies like Kerecis use micro radar to monitor heart rate, variability, and respiration for all passengers. And they're going to be integrating this into the seats, steering wheels, and there's also like what they call brainwaves. So experimental projects like Jaguar Land Rover's Sixth Sense will explore using EEG sensors in the seat and wheel to monitor alertness. So far, they're going to be just using these systems to make sure that you're alert, aware, paying attention to the road. But I already see a few flaws here. If you blink too much, if your eyes don't open all the way to a certain level that it deems that you're actually like not sleeping or paying attention, there could be evasive maneuvers taken by the vehicle. Basically, probably a shutdown. I don't know, but let's continue to read this, or I'll read it to you. So here's the passive impairment. an alcohol detection system that will be integrated. And I know that this is something that they wanted to put in 2024, but they missed the deadline. So this is absolutely mandated as something that has to be in vehicles in 2027. So here's the major focus of the automotive safety is the passive detection of alcohol, moving away from active breathalyzer tests to seamlessly integrate sensors. And here's how they're going to do it. They got infrared spectroscopy, which will measure BAC in skin capillaries or exhaled breath. They'd have breath-based sensors inside the car. They'll analyze naturally exhaled air within the cabin. Sweat analysis. So this will be done by detecting levels through the skin by contact on control. So like steering wheel, shifting knobs, buttons, like ignition, all that. And then there's what's called an approach gate. So there's cameras that would read the exterior that would monitor you, the way you're walking, and determine as to whether or not you're drunk based on how you're walking or how you're handling yourself. So this one here is kind of hard to argue with, right? I mean, the only thing I can say is there are certain products you consume that use certain alcohol, sugars, for example, or certain products or foods you eat that would exhibit or lead to a false positive because your breath can be read as having alcohol on the breath, as in you drank alcohol and consumed it and you're drunk or impaired. But we know that there are false positives out there. And we also know that there are certain things you consume that can lead to a detection of alcohol in the breath when you actually haven't physically drank any alcohol. So there is a little issue there, but it is hard to argue against drunk driving, as in allowing drunk driving. And listen, guys, it's 2026. At this point, if you're still trying to drink and drive, you're a loser. Use an Uber, man. Get a cab, stay home, call a friend, whatever the fuck it is. Make arrangements if you're going to go out on the town and drink. There isn't really too much of an excuse. And I say too much because there could be some crazy, weird, world-ending emergency, I guess. But that aside, which is very rare and probably will not happen, you shouldn't be getting behind a wheel if you're drinking. So there's that. Now, this leads to the kill switch. The HALT Act. The HALT Drunk Driving Act, it mandates that new passenger vehicles, including technology to prevent or limit motor vehicle operation if impairment is detected. And here's a timeline. So again, the mandate was this. It requires passive monitoring of driver performance and BAC levels. It was supposed to be initially implemented in 2024, but they missed that deadline. It's because that vehicles and whatever, it just wasn't ready commercially, the integration. But it has been mandated, it is now mandatory to include this, and is currently targeted for the 2027 model year. So it's happening. And so this is what's going to happen. This is the interventions if there's alcohol detected. Okay. There will be a no start condition. So locking the transmission or disabling the ignition while the vehicle is parked. There's going to be a limp home mode. So this can restrict speed and increase following distance. So the distance between you and another car. And it'll do this via adaptive cruise control. So the vehicle will take over via cruise control and basically kind of drive for you, or will drive for you. And there's also an emergency stop. So the vehicle will start to steer the vehicle to the shoulder and will bring it to a complete halt. And then there's the assistance request, where this is basically, they call emergency services, which will lead to the police. And it can unlock doors and activate flashers. Crazy, right? And then here's the other part of all this technology that to me is a little more concerning. So there's going to be surveillance technology, stuff that you would only see in probably a James Bond movie like spy tech, that's going to be also used against you. So there's going to be sensors in there that are going to be able to determine your emotional state. Okay? Emotional state. And also read your damn lips. So let's talk about the emotional state. There's going to be excitation mapping. There's patents from Denso and other explicitly categorized excitation as a monitorable state. So, God, I cannot read. It's getting long in this episode, guys. But anyway, there's going to be excitation mapping. There's also going to be emotion recognition. There's going to be disabling operation. Now, here's interesting. If a driver is deemed unfit due to extreme agitation, the HALT Act framework could allow the vehicle to disable itself. But the problem with that is there's a debate as to whether or not there will actually be an emergency override. Because imagine you're getting chased by a fucking axe murderer, someone with a gun, and your car is like right fucking there. You're like, I'm going to get in my car and get the hell out of here. But you're emotionally worked up. You're too agitated and too excited. So you get in your car, and your car's like, can't fucking drive. No, you're not in a condition to get behind this wheel and drive this car. You need to calm the fuck down. And while you're waiting and arguing with your damn car to start, said axe murderer or guy with gun will just unalive you. So I see lawsuits coming. Given that scenario, that situation, like you're in danger and you need to get away, of course you're going to be emotionally excited or whatnot. So yeah, I don't know about that one. And here's the other one. Here's the continuation of spy tech, right? So this emerging surveillance, lip reading technology. This has been developed by Ford. Ford has filed a patent for in-car lip reading technology. And they're trying to say that, well, if the cabin's noisy and the microphones don't pick up, then, we can read your lips using other technologies. And I have a problem with even microphones listening to me anyway. So that shouldn't even be happening. But here's the operational trigger. The system activates during high ambient noise. Okay. And this is how the mechanism works. So the machine will use, it will use machine learning trained on lip movements. It may also emit inaudible sound waves. Basically, it's going to use radar. It's going to analyze echoes that bounce off your mouth to determine what you're fucking saying. What the fuck? Hello? What? The spy tech is going to be used against you in your own fucking cars. And then there's the data and privacy concerns. You see, everything about you that's being read, your emotional state, the time of day you drive, how fast you drive, you sweat too much, blink too much, look away maybe, whatever. All of this data is going to be collected. And there's been talks of this being provided to the insurance companies and even law enforcement. Insurance companies will now be able to charge you a custom rate based on your driving or what it determines to be erratic driving, or if you're a person they determine to be in a high emotional state every time you're behind the wheel, or you have more elevated emotional states than the next person, you'll get charged more. Or you may be deemed to be uninsurable. And then the law enforcement implications. I mean, isn't that part of the fucking fun? Like, come on. Speeding? Really? We already know that if you didn't see it, it didn't happen, right? We're just talking about. There's nobody on the road. You're driving, a few over the speed limit, whatever. I mean, this is America, man. This is like, we created the sense of freedom on the road, the muscle cars, right? Home and land of the muscle car, Route 66, all of that shit. Like, at what point did it become acceptable for the government to implement a surveillance state within the privacy of our own fucking vehicle? Like, that's what this is. Your vehicle, the cars that America is so proud to own because it represents freedom of travel, go anywhere, do what we want, right? You're driving to and from the job, you're on vacation, whatever it is, you're going to the beach. You will do so under a state of surveillance implemented by the fucking state. Your data will be collected and sold to insurance agencies and law enforcement and government entities, I'm sure, to further assess your viability, your ability to exist, probably. I mean, it feels like communist China is going to start to be like the way they do things is going to start to be implemented here in the US, and they're going to start with our cars. They're going to start with our cars. But that's not all, because aside from that, I'm not going too deep on this, but there's patents out there. I believe Google owns the patents. You can fact check me on that. But anyway, Wells Fargo has in their patent portfolio, what they want to do is use what has been patented and I believe developed to be a biometric dust that contains all these nanoparticles, right? So what they're saying is they're going to use this to identify you. This dust, this biometric dust, can identify you through your facial recognition, like how it analyzes your physical appearance based on how the dust interacts with you, your heart rate, everything. You won't even know it's there. You could just walk into this mist and you probably wouldn't even see it. It'll absorb into your skin. Wells Fargo thinks that they can use this, or they want to use it, to be able to identify you so that they can deem you're the person that's supposed to be using their services, like an ATM, for example. But what if you're just making a payment? I don't know. Anyway, I think this is a bridge too far, especially for a financial institution who is doing nothing but holding your own hard-earned fucking money. I mean, all the bank is supposed to be is a place that safely stores your money. But the bank thinks that you're just an asset and that they need all of your data, everything about you. They want to inject into you through aerosols, penetrate your skin with some kind of biometric device that they're going to use on you. And once it's in you, does it come out, or is it there permanently? Are you now being tracked? Are you being recorded? Every single move you make, everything you do, everything that you say, where you go, like your patterns. Think about it. All through this biometric dust that's going to be implemented. And Wells Fargo wants to lead the charge in doing this. A fucking financial institution. The surveillance state that we've all been warning about seems to be here. It is coming. And it's starting with our fucking cars, guys. Our cars, our vehicles, any new vehicle. And look, buy used, do whatever you can. Find someone who's savvy. Rip that shit out if you can. I think maybe just go back to kit cars. I'm sure the government will eventually deem all these other vehicles illegal and they're going to force us to buy new ones or implement these technologies somehow. But until then, do what you can to fight the system. This is the land of the free, man. This is America. We're not going to stand for that bullshit. So, look, I'm going to end it there. Guys. This was a long episode. I know. We talked about Iran. We fact-checked Davey Boy Smith and Tim Cartman Dillon. We discussed a few things, all the way to the surveillance state technology that's going to be implemented and things that you do not have a choice to deny. Crazy world we live in, right? Crazy fucking world we live in. It really is. Listen, everybody, continue to like, subscribe, and share the show. Please leave me a damn 5-star review. And I'm going to say this. I have a lot of people who direct message me, who tell me, hey, great episode, loved what you said, etc. Do me a favor. I appreciate your reaching out, but put that in a review on Apple, Spotify, whatever it is. You watch me on YouTube, leave a comment, leave a recommendation, share that episode. Let everybody know about World Ablaze. Let's grow this thing together. I appreciate everybody. And with that being said, have yourself a good day.
Devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell.